You're at Tips and Tricks for Kickstart 2. I'm going to be down here because there's like 15 of you and I don't really want to be up on stage, so maybe that'll make me feel a little more comfortable too. Yes. That's a good point. When you spread everybody out, it feels like less. My name is Josh Miller. I'm a commerce guy and have been for, commerce guys. If you're not really sure what we do, try to read the name again and think really hard. What would a commerce guy do? One of the things that we've developed recently is Kickstart. In fact, I think this logo is a little misleading because Kickstart existed well before Kickstart 2. It's existed since 2011, and what it was a distribution that just installed views and I think rules, and that's about it. And that's I think what Ryan uses almost all the time when he's checking out modules, checking out patches, that kind of thing. He uses Kickstart 1. And if I were to build a site right now, I would have to really struggle between, do I want to use Kickstart 1 or 2, because they use the same code. The only difference is something we'll get into. But Commerce Kickstart is what we're going to be talking about. So I had a lot of fun when I built this for DrupalCamp Florida, and I was like, after the presentation, I thought, okay, there's a lot of stuff I want to change about this presentation. And so be forewarned, if you guys ever find yourself up here doing this, take notes, because I remember there were a lot of changes, and I tried to make a few, and it was very foggy in my head as to what was happening. But I was very excited at Florida to say that I put this up on GitHub. And in fact, if you download this, install it, and run it, you can even click on this little guy. He's and download the presentation, which is funny because you've already downloaded it. So, and up here we have a countdown for the end of the presentation. I've always wanted that in a PowerPoint. You can't do that normally. So I about jumped ahead and started defining Kickstart 2. Does anybody know what Kickstart 2 really is? Any volunteers? It is a demo, but it's more than a demo. It's less than a demo. Anyone else? No ideas. Okay, so we're here to learn. Has anybody actually installed Commerce Kickstart 2? Got a couple hands, 3 hands, 4, 5, most of the people. Okay, so you've installed it, so it's an installable something. Maybe it includes Drupal. I have a couple ideas here. It's a demo store. That's, I think, what most people think of it as, demo store. Ryan was saying in his presentation yesterday, it's also a sales tool. And I think that's what comes with the demo store. I think one of the most useful things that it has, though, is that it is a development tool with all kinds of fancy store administrator features. Not necessarily store builder features, but store administrator.
I know what it is. It's the documentation for Drupal.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of is in a way, because this is the whole point, right? It gives you all kinds of ways to work with commerce pre-done. You can look at a catalog. You can look at the order management and so forth. And this is not stock commerce. This is Kickstart 2 commerce. And so commerce guys sat down, was it last summer, I think, and decided they wanted to try to make a best case scenario with commerce and build it up the way we would want to build it up and the way we had been building up for clients, but not all of that always makes it back out to the community. So we kind of wanted to do a best case scenario, and a lot, maybe all, I don't think it's everything yet, almost everything that's in Kickstart 2 is now an installable module that you can install on any commerce store. So that allows you to look at Kickstart 2 with its 195 modules and be impressed with its amazingness and take the 5 or 6 things you really want from it and put it in a commerce store and set it up the way it's set up there in Kickstart 2, but not necessarily use it as a base install. You can, and we'll talk about that. And most of all, it is a distribution. And I kept calling it an install profile. Does anybody remember the install profiles of old? An install profile back in the day was just kind of an SQL dump and an install thing that ran that SQL dump so that your Drupal site was set up the way it should be. It's much more than that, and the actual term on D.O, Drupal.org, is distribution. So that's what we're going for here. It is a distribution. And without further ado, I'm going to demo this. There's a couple things about the demo. It's going to be quick, but I want to bring you first into the install screen, because the installer, I think, is one of the prettier things of this. And if you all want to make your own distribution, please take the way we did this install, change the color, because I think it's just really pretty. But once you put in your email address, you'll note, and I want to really point this out, you have username admin, horrible idea. Password admin, even worse idea. This is like your copy machine having the password 1234, or if you're really smart, 4321. Change this, please, because only once. It's only happened to us once, but once we had the demo, the real demo, on commerceguys.com running Kickstart 2, and we didn't change it, and somebody logged in. So change this unless you're installing it locally, which I'm doing. And you click Save and Continue. And I actually set up this install just so you would see these two screens. There's a lot more going on when you do this. There's all these steps. You can see they're already green. So this is a standard Drupal install. But right here is where some of the coolest parts of Kickstart 2 happen. Because if you just click Yes here, under Do you want to install the demo store, you get a lot more than just one little radio button suggests. You get an entire store built with all kinds of modules. If you want to develop on Kickstart 2, you're going to want to click No. In fact, I would say install 2 of them. Install one with a demo, install one with a no demo. But here, under Install Additional Functionality, you kind of see a couple of the features that Kickstart 2 has. This is not everything. In the no demo, one of the things that makes it a non-demo is instead of colors, we've made it gray, but it's pretty much the same thing. Instead of rounded corners, you get square corners. You know, so you can feel like, I'm a designer, I made these round again. There is a localization option, and what this does, if you turn it on, is it turns on some of the modules that come with Kickstart 2, but aren't on by default because there's a lot of them. And I'm trying to, I think it was Gizra that we were partnering with some of the functionality for like the email functionality. We used the messages module. If you haven't used that, that's a great module. Anyway, they were trying to make it work in, I don't know which language, but it wasn't English. And they said, hey, this should come in Kickstart 2. And we said, great, we'll just make it an option. So click that, and you'll have most of the modules you need to translate your store. Of course, you can change your currency. I think this is part of Kickstart 2 or Kickstart 1's install profile options as well, and you can generate a tax rate. So those are the most options. Pretty much all the options you have when you do a Kickstart 2 install. And once you choose yes for the demo, this is what it looks like. It is a responsive theme, and it has all kinds of stuff going on with it that you would think most websites would have, including a slideshow, including a nice catalog that, I mean, I'm running a MacBook Air and SSD, so it's going to load a little bit faster here than maybe on your actual site. And if we go to where, what's that? Then on your PC, that's right. No, there's a big difference between just installing a Drupal site to play around with it and installing a site and making sure it's cached for actual usage. So any Drupal site you do, it's going to feel a little bit sluggish unless you turn on some caching. If you go to the to wear and maybe pick one of the sweatshirts, you will see a nice product page as opposed to the standard Kickstart one, or even Commerce. If you install Commerce just by itself with views and rules by yourself, you won't even see this. You won't have any kind of product page at all. That's okay though, because the whole point is to build a core, a base, a stage, a platform, and then you can build whatever you want to build on top of it. But Kickstart 2 gives you all kinds of fancy options, including, once it's loaded into the cache, a very fancy color selector that just like that changes the colors, that kind of stuff. So this is what Kickstart 2 is. If we go back to my presentation, now we're going to get into tips and tricks, just so you guys get a little overview of Kickstart 1. Tip number 1, we want you to eat lots of bacon, dark chocolate, while petting kittens. looking at rainbows, all kinds of crazy stuff. The real trick, the first tip is the community wins, okay? You are not some silo sitting in like this little walled garden making everything in the world work. You need people to help you. You need lots of help. I need lots of help. I cannot do my job without everybody in this room. The community wins. And I actually have a tab for this one as well. This is our question and answer section on DrupalCommerce.org. And what I do every day, I am very privileged to have the job that I have, is I can go here on new questions and answer all these questions. The problem is, I did this as an experiment. Friday, I sat down and answered, I think, 6 questions all in a row that were all listed here. Ryan helped with a couple of them as well. Of course, Ryan's were more detailed and probably better thought out. So all the zeros right here are all the questions that have come in since Friday. So there's not too many. There's enough. People keep asking questions. The thing is, you could take any one of these questions and Google it and probably get a good answer. I think maybe instead of questions and answers, we should call this the lazy commerce section. But what I'd love for you guys to do once we're done with this is to log in. If you don't have an account already, make an account on here and try to answer one question. Not because I want more answers than questions, but because I think you can, and I think that's the best way to learn, is to help other people learn. So this may not, you may look at these questions like, I have no idea how to answer that. You have a brain. You can figure this out. You're at a Drupal camp. You've already figured out some of it already. So figure this out. Answer them the best way you can. It may just be a link to a module. It may be a little bit more involved than that. It may be saying, hey, Kickstart 2 does this. Have you looked at exactly how that's built? Thus proving the point that Kickstart 2 is actually our documentation. But community wins, tip number 1. There's also on DrupalCommerce.org a whole bunch of other things. Like, you can look at the topics that everyone is talking about here. Rules is the #1 talked about topic. I don't tweak this list at all. People have a lot of questions about rules. In fact, almost every one of these questions have an answer. So you could actually sit there and learn about rules by going through the questions and answers. And another great section is the video library. The video library on DrupalCommerce.org is full of hundreds of hours of videos that I personally did not do, but I've collected and collated and put in fancy, colorful categories for you to hopefully help you figure out what it is you're looking at. So we have a Commerce Module Tuesday. Every Tuesday we try to post a blog post. We try to highlight a commerce module that no one's ever heard of before because there's just not that many installs, but it's a great module. There's over 400 commerce modules that are out there that are specific to commerce. Then there's, of course, thousands that are specific to Drupal. We have presentations like this one. Hopefully, I'm not walking outside the frame of the video. I probably am, though. And there's the basics, of course, and it just keeps going and going. There's all kinds of really cool videos here that you guys should probably watch, and this isn't a bad way to find them. So DrupalCommerce.org, community wins, tip number 1. Tip number 2, this guy's having a lot of trouble. And I feel like this represents the first 2 years of my Drupal experience. This is like the fancy tire that has all this great, awesome strength, and I just have no capability of changing it. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. You want to start with a demo store because you want to see how it's built. You want to see how commerce works. You want to see a great working functional site that you can log in and break. But you definitely want to build with a non-demo store. You do not want to build on the demo store. In fact, we see a lot of examples of sites that look like this site, but they've changed like 2 colors. It is kind of cool to see those, but they've changed 2 colors, which means I kind of want to go to /user and type admin to see, you know, is this how they're still accessing their site? What you want to do is install the no demo store. Like I said, there's no rounded corners. It's all gray, and that's really all the difference. Everything is still set up. You've still got your search API. This is a no demo with no options. None of those checkboxes checked. You can check the slideshow to get the slideshow to come back and just change the images and the titles. But so no demo store. If you're going to build on Kickstart 2, build with no demo store. I wouldn't be saying it if I didn't see it out in the wild. Another tip, if you haven't actually looked at Kickstart 2, then you might be missing one of the coolest features of all. And I still haven't actually demoed this, so I'm going to pull up my tab 3 here. This is the all products listing. And what the all products listing does, and really what all the catalog pages do on Kickstart 2, is their views. Views is a very powerful, fantastic module that lets you do all kinds of tweaks and changes. So your client maybe wants 3 images instead of 1. Maybe he wants or she wants to highlight the first product with a big long teaser and the other products to make them smaller. You can do all kinds of stuff with this page because it's a view. On top of that, it's a search API view, which means you can change out the back end of what's actually giving you these results. We use a database index right now because that installs on your server without haggling you. But if you want this to handle lots of traffic, you might consider Apache Solr, which you can simply set up an Apache Solr instance and run the reindex and it'll just work. That's a fantastic, this is a huge win. If I were building a Drupal site without Commerce and I needed Search API, I would definitely look to see how this thing is set up because it actually works. It's a functional example of that. But to further belabor the point of what this does for Commerce, though, is you can now start doing things like Newegg does, where you choose a particular kind of product or a particular kind of brand, and it still gives you color options that show up there. It still can give you the various categories. So maybe I just wanted a t-shirt from that brand, and when you do that, it actually filters down the selection list even further and gives you all these faceted options. I wish Google would do more of this kind of stuff because this is how my brain thinks. I go wide and then I want to go small. And if you do a search term, you actually search for something on the site, this is the page that shows up, and you'll see over here on the top there, you see simple threads and t-shirts with a big X right next to them. Your search term will show up there too, and then you can facet from there. So very handy thing because what we're actually looking at is not a product page at all. It's just a search result. Search API is a very powerful kind of thing. Tip number 4. Product variations and product displays are very different. They're extremely different. I actually like this illustration. I spent a little bit of time on it because I feel like it's hard to understand the data model behind Commerce. And the data model is designed to be the best platform it can be so you can build anything you want on it, including stores without interfaces. And a lot of those exist. And that's because we're the most flexible e-commerce platform in the world. And we definitely believe this. But what that means to you as site builders is you have this strange concept of you have a blue t-shirt, okay? Let's say this is a DrupalCon t-shirt, and it's the same logo, and you have 3 sizes, and maybe you have 3 colors. So what you need to do in Commerce is you need to create 9 different t-shirts that are all the same t-shirt, but if you look in the back of your shop, where you're going to be pulling from stock, putting them in a package, and sending them off, you actually have 9 different stacks. You have the colors, and you have the sizes all figured out. If you go back to the vendor's booth and you see the Veloci t-shirts, you will not see one massive stack of t-shirts. You will see nice, neat little rows, each with a different size. This is how physical products, this is how products in general work. And what we do is we take all of these products that are all in one specific category, and we build like a little selector that you can kind of configure your product. And there's a lot more that goes into that, but I want you guys to know that product variations, which is what products really are very different than product displays. So we have tip 4. I have a tab for that. This is another graphic that's on DrupalCommerce.org that you can find in the documentation. And I try to illustrate this without getting into any major details. You have a catalog, and let's say your catalog has different taxonomy terms, electronics, games, and you see all those products are right there. That's a node level field. That's a product display. That's saying this is a DrupalCon t-shirt, and that's what you're buying, but you might buy a different color. You might buy a different size. When you're on the actual product page, you still can see maybe 1 or 2 of the terms that product has, but you might see a price as well, and that price could change based on the color or the size, etc. Maybe the discount too, but that's a whole nother thing. You have a drop down here of the various different colors. Those are product level fields. So if you're going to add products to your Commerce Kickstart 2 site, you're going to want to have taxonomy terms that are in the product variations themselves. And so each product has these different pieces. We build the product page like that. So a lot of people want this all to be in nodes. If you want that, that's UberCart. And we're just putting that out on the table, that UberCart is gone. Don't even think about UberCart anymore, because what we have here is an awesomely flexible commerce situation that answers a lot of the questions that UberCart does not answer in a deep API type of way. So you definitely like product variations and product displays because it makes everyone's life easier in the future. Tip number 5. I love the awkward penguin. In fact, I just like internet memes, and I'm thankfully, I can stay away from Reddit long enough to actually get work done. My wife, however, keeps occasionally sending me these things. So I get this awkward penguin guy. He's going to the gym, and he wants to check into Facebook. So people, I swear I do this sometimes, though. Like, I want people to know that I'm in a coffee shop because I want my former coworkers to be totally jealous that I can work in coffee shop. But okay, so social media is everywhere, and South by Southwest guy was standing up here yesterday, and you could see those word bubbles, and social was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Everyone wants to talk about social media, and you can actually do this with Kickstart 2. I created a tip blog that talks about how you can actually log into a Kickstart 2 with various social sites, like Facebook, like Twitter. And what it boils down to is you essentially set up the OAuth connector module, which is something that comes with Kickstart 2. And you sign up with your Twitter app ID, which you would get if you logged into Twitter, the developer section, and requested one. And then you would watch this video that shows you how to do it, where I painstakingly blurred out all these little bits of information that you're not supposed to see, so you can't just, take my app ID, etc. But it's all there, and it shows you how to do it. It's a working thing with OAuth 2, which means anything that uses OAuth 2 could technically be connected to Kickstart 2 and allow you to log in. And what you do is you click that little icon, it takes you to Facebook, and it says, authorize app. And then it sends you right back to Kickstart 2, and it fills in your information, and you let them pick a password, and you click submit, and they've created a customer profile on the site so that they can check out easily. That's great for your customer because it means they don't have as many logins to remember, and it's great for you, particularly if you get them to do it using Facebook, because that means you get a lot more information. There's all kinds of crazy information that when you're setting up your Facebook app, you can see all kinds. You can ask for their birthday. You can ask for their relatives. It's a little creepy how much you can get out of your customers if you just make it really convenient to log in. Just log in, click this little icon, right? Okay, so that's tip number 5. Yes, we have questions? Right, so what OAuth does is it's connected to your actual account, not necessarily your password. Right, so as long as you're logged into Facebook, once you set this up, it lets you log into the store, which was really hard to demo. I had to keep opening all these browsers because it's kind of like such a sticky login that it was hard to show it before and after. But the video does clearly demonstrate all of that.
And I mean, from a conversion standpoint, the more data you ask, the less likely they are to say okay. But you always get an email address, which is why I give a discount to customers that log into Facebook, because then I can email them later, even if they never ordered from me, like that particular login. So that's really important to me as a merchant.
Right, so Ryan was saying, essentially, if you ask for less information, you still get an email, which is very, very handy. Tip number 6. This is a fun one, and it's one that if you just installed Commerce, the demo, and you're like, okay, I want to show this to a client, and you're going to start on the non-demo, you're going to sit there and say, okay, I want to create a new catalog, and you go and look at this catalog, and you're oh, that's 7. Hold on, we're on 6. All right, you go and look at this catalog. The No Demo Store here is installed with a couple of those options, but still the corners are squared, so you get to round those again. But it comes with a couple sample categories. You want to create your own categories though, right? And you want to create maybe your own pages over here. Maybe you want to tweak some of the other stuff. And as a Drupal developer, you're like, okay, I want to change the menu. I know exactly what I need to do. And you look up here and you're like, holy cow, this menu has changed. Okay, products, orders. Okay, this is designed not for a site builder, for a store administrator. But you can almost always get to anything you need to get to using site settings. That's basically the rest of the menu went back into site settings. And somewhere in here, I believe there is a menu option. So I'm just going to try on structure. I think it's in structure. Yeah, okay, so there's menus. And you click on menus, and you're like, okay, there's a couple menus that come here. And I'm just going to guess, because you never really do know which menu you're using for which block you see there. But okay, yeah, there's a sample category, 1, 2, and all products. Let me stop you right there, okay? It is a menu, but it is not a menu that you can edit. If you edit it, that's fine, it'll work. It'll work the first time you do that, it'll work the 10th time you do that. But if you add a category, the moment you add a category, it will rebuild this menu and delete all the menu items. So this is one of those tricks, right? If you want to change this menu, and I will exit out of this quickly here. If you want to change the sample categories that are over here and on the left side, you actually have to change the categories first. So you go up to products, and then, because it makes sense that if you're thinking about product categories, you would go to products. But if you're thinking taxonomy, like a site builder would do, a Drupal site builder would do, you would not think products. So it's there under products, categories. You click that, that takes you to the taxonomy list. There's only one vocabulary name for non-demo. If you're working with demo, you'll see like 20. So another reason to use the non-demo store. And if you go and look at the terms, you'll find that there are 2 terms there, sample category 1 and 2. And I'm going to just go ahead and add another one. And I'm going to click Save. Now you would think it should rebuild the menu just like that. It should go ahead and rebuild it because that's what Josh Miller said in his tips and tricks presentation. The problem is it doesn't do that. What you have to do, and you only have to do this once, is you have to click Edit. And what this Edit button does up there at the top is it edits the vocabulary. It's like the content type, except it's the vocabulary. And there's this fancy thing here for taxonomy menu that gives you all kinds of options, which is why we love Drupal. And there at the very bottom, there's a select to rebuild the menu on submit. And what that does is that scary thing that I was just telling you about. It deletes everything and rebuilds the menu. And once you've done this once, when you add a category, it will change the menu. It is an issue that I've opened that you shouldn't have to do this once. It should always either do this or not do this. But you click Save here, and your menu will be rebuilt. Everything will be deleted, but everything else will come back, and everybody's happy in the world. And there's some sort of magic, and I would love to figure this out. I'm sure it's in the code somewhere where that all products gets added. I close this, it'll refresh, and you'll see my test category shows there at the top. And it shows up in a way that you can change it and tweak it. You can change the order based on the taxonomy or the menu. If you use the menu option and you add another category, it'll all shuffle back and you have to change the order again. So I recommend you change the taxonomy weight as opposed to the menu weight. So that's how you add a taxonomy menu. And this will bite you if you're building on Kickstart too, because you're going to think menu, because we're site developers and we're not store developers. Tip number 7. This tip is one that is still building. And it's one of the many products that we're starting to offer at Commerce Guys, and it's called Marketplace. And really what I want you guys to know, and I'm going to go back to my first tip and show you another section real quick. Because really my first love and everything that I like to do with my daily job is to interact with the community. And I love doing that on Drupal.org. The problem is there are thousands of modules, hundreds of thousands of forum posts and issues, and I'm not really sure where things are. So I like to go to DrupalCommerce.org and make sure there's a nice curated list of things. And I clicked on Getting Started, and then I clicked on Free Extensions. We call them extensions because there's themes, there's other distributions, there's modules, and there's sandboxes that all use and work with commerce. And if you click on the module section, you will see a big, nice, curated, categorized, just like the videos, list of all the modules that will work with commerce. I would love to see this on Drupal.org. Someday maybe we can try to really organize it and make it easy to find things like this. But let's say you want to do donations, you can go here and look at the 5 donation modules, which one's the most installed. Installs, not downloads, are a great way to tell how many active sites are actually using those modules. So we've taken this same idea with a little bit more curation and created the marketplace. And the marketplace is just marketplace.commerceguys.com, and you go to the add-on section, which I will go back to. I'm looking at Amazon right now. We have a bunch of partners that we've worked with to make sure their modules pass all the security checks and are implementing the API very, very well. And we've listed them here in the marketplace. And the idea is we're going to start to bring in more and more community projects as well, not just modules that Commerce Guys have built. And these are modules that you can trust and you can learn a lot more about. So for example, I was on the Amazon page, which I'm looking for now. There it is. I think it's really cool that Amazon's one of our partners. And I think this is a cool payment option that you have with commerce sites. You can actually sit there and allow your customers, kind of like Facebook, but if they're logged into Amazon, they can use their shipping addresses, they can use the payments that they have set up on Amazon, all within your commerce site. And the idea with Marketplace here is, well, we're just trying to make you guys look better, really. That's really what we're trying to do. And that's the big tip. We want you guys to be the hero for your client. But one of the things that Marketplace offers is a lot more media and a lot more documentation and videos, etc., that will help you get along with your project. So definitely check out Marketplace and try to figure out what the next payments and etc. are going to. But if you don't want to go through Marketplace, there's always the community site with a huge listing, a very large breadth of modules that are out there. Now, I don't make any qualms about putting modules up there that are not working on DrupalCommerce.org, but I do make sure you can see the installs, and I try to make sure there's a status. For example, up here at the top, these are all the statuses: in development, active, and recommended. If you just want to see the recommended modules, you can filter down to recommended. Not sure if I want more CK2 tips because they're awesome or because I don't know what I'm doing. It's okay because there's a lot more tips that are in the community, but also in the actual Kickstart site. If you go and look here, I've got taxes brought up, the taxes menu, and there at the top we have a conditional tax. We've got a little commerce guy, a little bubble that's linking you to a video that shows you how to set up your tax rates. So when you install Kickstart 2, you actually get a whole bunch of tips right out of the box, right there, when you're sitting there trying to figure out what the heck a tax rate is or why there's a tax rate and a tax type.
Back to that installs question on the modules.
Sure.
So you know those modules are installed.
Yes.
Do you know if people are actually using them?
Well, no, that's a real question, and we're getting all these statistics from Drupal.org, and we know that they are actually enabled. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say if they're actively being used.
Is it decremented when they're
Yes, yes. So every week, Drupal.org will update the stats, but they keep updating it every week. So what happens is when your cron runs on your site, and you have that little checkbox that says, yes, I would like to help the community by telling them what I have installed, it's on by default. Every time your cron runs, it pings the server and says, hey, I've been alive this entire time, and it'll go and tell every module on Drupal.org that, yes, this site was active at this time. So those statistics kind of change over the times, and sometimes with the commerce number we look at, it's almost 29,000 right now, it's 28 something. it'll kind of go down, and then like 3 weeks later, where it went down, it's now like really high up. So please make your crons run faster. That would make our job a lot easier. But yeah, so the active installs are a great way, because those are this last week's numbers that you're seeing. And if you're using the community site, which is here, we'll just choose inline entity form. This is a great, this is actually a module that's set up perfectly on Kickstart 2 to use, and it's one of the reasons it's the most installed. But you can see it's 3 times the amount of downloads. And some of the question in the community is, well, smart developers probably uncheck that check mark for statistics. And they might say, well, I've got this site, but I don't want to necessarily phone home to Drupal.org. So we really have no idea how many sites are actually running this, but we do know there are 10,000 sites that have said, yes, I am running this. But I recommend you click the module page button, because that will actually take you to the module page on Drupal.org, and you can go down here and see that their statistics are a little fresher than mine. We update DrupalCommerce.org about once a month with all these statistics. It's not a live feed. I don't think D.O has an API. In fact, I know they don't have an API. I've asked. It would be great if there was an API for me to get these statistics to you live, but they update this weekly, and it changes, and you can kind of see the uptake. It's fun. This is one of my favorite places to go on Drupal.org, is to see how fantastic things are going for all these modules. Okay, so that was really our last tip, and I have 18 minutes until the next speaker. Are there any other questions? I know you guys have already asked some, but if you have a store in mind and you would like to use Commerce Brain or two, Ryan's here as well, to help answer some of your questions, we're available. So any questions at all for Commerce guys? Yeah. Okay, so this guy right over here said, okay, uninstalling is not necessarily fun. And it would be interesting, because I've never actually tried to uninstall Commerce. Because it's one of those things that if you're setting up a Commerce site, you've probably set it up. It would be fun. I think it would just be a fun experiment to install a Drupal site, install UberCart and Commerce, and just watch them battle it out for like /cart, you know. But uninstalling Commerce is why would you do that? If you can answer that question, then maybe we can start going through. Oh, okay. Okay. So, yes. Okay. Kickstart 2, the distribution uses features and migrate. And those are great features, and they try to use this really cutting edge thing that allows you to export and import configuration. But the problem is it's really not native to Drupal, okay? It's not native, and every module maintainer has to come up with a way to make that happen. And most of them are using CTools exportables, but they may not be implementing the entire stack of CTools exportables. Drupal 8 comes with that by default. That's one of the most amazing features that's coming to Drupal, and the configuration, export, import is going to be great. Until that happens, when you install a distribution that uses features, there's going to be some really big gotchas. Like the content type that comes installed may not be deletable. There are some other variables that if you change them, like you uncheck something, you click save, it may come back and still stay checked, because we're using StrongArm to make sure that variable stays there. So you want to be very careful once you change something, and even a non-demo store, to make sure it's actually gone. And it will be hard to delete some things that come with the demo store. That's why we recommend leave the demo store to be a demo. Any site that is actually running on a demo store, I guarantee you their first 3 orders have nothing to do with their site, because those came in with the demo store. And that's going to throw off their statistics, because those actually have purchasable items. And if you're looking at, sales over the last year, you've got some demo store content in there that's changing your statistics. So be careful with the demo store. Non-demo everything should be everything you should be able to get rid of. And if there's something you can't get rid of, let us know. Open up an issue. Ryan's going to cringe when I say that, but open up an issue, or at the very least, go to IRC and tell us, hey, I tried to get rid of this menu item on a non-demo Kickstart 2 site, and it's just not going away. What do I do? There's ways you can get to it.
You open in the Kickstart queue. I don't see that.
Oh, okay, well, you just open up all the issues you want in Kickstart queue, because Ryan doesn't have to deal with those. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Ryan?
Your counter says you have 14 more slides.
No, those are that's 14 minutes,
Oh.
and that updates every minute. It's a little JavaScript guy. See, another reason to fork it on GitHub. Use this for your presentation, because it's very handy. I know exactly how much time I have, as long as my computer's right.
On a distribution like this, I've not messed with them a whole lot, but it seems like modules don't end up in sites or modules. They end up elsewhere. And
It's a great question. Okay.
So if you go to like update views, for example, if you do a drush up views,
Yes.
does it go to the right place?
Yeah, you really shouldn't do that. No, if you go into Kickstart 2, and we'll just take a look at it, because I've got one running right here, and you go into site settings, and gosh, I want to say it's in. It really makes you try to remember where everything is in Drupal, and if we moved it around. No, it's under modules in Drupal 7, isn't it? Where you update the actual modules. What we've done is we've done a lot of. The comment was, this is kind of a question, the comment was, distributions put their modules in weird places. It's not in the Sites All Modules folder. Okay, so when you use Kickstart 2, we have, okay, click on the update tab here. We have all of the distribution modules, including views, which is a big one, and you may really want to keep your eye on that, rules, all these other modules could have a security release, and you as a great site developer should update those. The problem is, if you're very proactive and you see these things happening before the distributions had a chance to react to it, it may totally take your site down. So what we've done is we've tweaked the update so that we only show you the update for the distribution that is the most recent. So we'll hide the views security checks, we'll hide the rules security checks, for a certain number of days. If views had a security release and it's been 3 days, it will show up here regardless. Same thing with Drupal core. It will show up here. But I highly recommend you wait until the distribution catches up with the contributed modules and you just reinstall the distribution. You just replace the distribution files. We have a big, in fact, it's one of our, and this may be the reason why, on the community site we have a very active page that explains how to install and update all on the same page. So if you go to Getting Started, that's a great place to find all the user guides, etc. And if you go to Kickstart 2 guide here and installing and upgrading, this is one of our most trafficked pages. But it has an entire section here, step by step, how to upgrade your Kickstart 2 site. And this is a very paranoid way of doing it. There are other ways you can try to do it. You could try to do drush up. Last time I tried that, didn't work. There's some distribution issues with where the modules are, etc. Would definitely not drush up. Drush up is a command line where you update a module. So if you were to do drush up views and it installed views and Sites All Modules instead of distribution, you would have 2 copies of views, and you may end up with all kinds of fun errors that aren't in the issue queues. So I highly recommend going to DrupalCommerce.org, using this step by step to make sure you've got yourself the most latest things. It's like I paid you for that answer. I don't know. The question was, with the Kickstart 2 responsive theme, how does this work? And my goodness, this is a tiny little monitor. So that's actually good for us. Okay, so there we go. There's our monitor, or our page. And I'm going to close this out. Now, this is a responsive theme, and it's built on Omega 3, which is, somebody said last night at the after party that Omega 3 has been around for a couple years. So maybe Omega 4 will finally come out soon enough. But what it does is it does tweak it, and you'll notice here it's got the menu that just kind of pops into a mobile responsive menu. But how do you make your site that's built on Kickstart to do this? We're using the Omega_commerce, I believe is what it's called, theme, and we're sub-theming that for Kickstart. So we chose Omega. Jake Strawn is the guy who's done Omega, and it gives you almost all the configurability that you need on the interface. It's very handy to be able to tweak the mobile breakpoints, etc., right there in the screen. But if you're more comfortable with Sass, Zen is a great one. Zen, I think it's 5, has a fantastic way of doing mobile responsive, and there's no reason you couldn't use a different theme. In fact, I would recommend you don't use this specific theme, because we're seeing more and more stores just use this because it's easy, and that's great, and you get your store up really fast. But maybe not just changing the logo out, but tweak the design just a little bit. Maybe change a color or two. But it's kind of cool that it does just kind of do that. I don't know about you guys, but I've actually tried to do that with menus, and it's hard. Any other questions? Another one. Okay, yeah, panels, you can do a lot with panels. In fact, there was a big discussion after we launched this if we shouldn't have just built the entire distribution on, I'm trying to remember, there's a panelizer, is that it? The whole distribution that's all panels based instead of block and layout based. You can do that. There's a couple pages that you'll have trouble panelizing, and I think it's the order. When the customer logs in and looks at their order page, that's had some pings in the issue queue where there's a couple things. You can force it because they're all blocks. So you can just insert a block inside of a panel, but it's not native. The great thing is one of the panel module maintainers is Chris Vanderwater. He is a commerce guy, and he's helped a number of commerce projects launch on panels. One of the biggest commerce sites that we don't always talk about, it's zondervan.com, and it's all panel based. So it does work. It can work. Glowing endorsement.
It shouldn't break. Yeah.
It shouldn't break. Well, you know, it is Drupal, and panels is all kinds of things. Okay. That's a good question. I don't know about the panels SEO problem, but I do know there is a great module that I should add to this called Commerce Good Relations, if I can type it. And Commerce Good Relations does this really cool thing that we all kind of want our sites to do, and it allows you to have a rating and the price and all the great metadata that Drupal and Bing uses right there in the search results. And it uses an open source, I'm trying to remember everything. It might be called Good Relations. But what's really cool is this link right here. If you click this link, it will take you to a structured data testing tool. Oh, and it's no longer functional. Maybe I'm not logged in. No, I'm logged in. Okay. Well, it was showing this exact example, and it was live. And it was cool to play around with how that RDFA data was getting pulled into that search result. But you install this module, and you install rating, and it just works. So SEO could be very, very handy with Kickstart, too. Commerce Good Relations. That's all we were talking about. There's all kinds of great SEO modules. And the people to talk to about that are the people at the Veloci table out in the vendors, because they know their stuff about Drupal modules and SEO. One more.
Do you have a module that blocks for
Google Product Feed. Is that where they have, where you actually click on Google products and they list all the products out?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm not familiar with any that actually work out of the box, but Views has some really great RSS capabilities and feed type. There's a JSON plugin you can use with Views, and whatever the structure is that they need out of your site, you can always get Drupal to do that. So.
Yeah, you should be able to build the feed using views. There's not to be any additional.
Yeah, I tried to do. I tried. Brian just said you can build the feed using views. I've tried to do this with the iTunes format, so you can like do blog posts or not blog, podcasts on Drupal, and it was painful, very painful. But views can pretty much do anything as long as you don't mind doing a custom module or two. But I think a JSON exporter would work great, and I'm sure there's one that is fantastic for views. All right, I'm going to wrap this up, but if there are more questions, we do have a booth out in the vendor, and if you just see Ryan or I walking around, you can always talk to us. Definitely go to GitHub and download this guy and see how this was built. It's kind of a fun way to kind of hack someone's slides. Thanks a lot.